Welcome to the Stevens Coolidge place, previously known as Ashdale Farm while it was in the care of the Stevens family for 6 generations. It was their North Andover summer retreat and not an income-producing farm. The family mostly lived in Boston's Back Bay area and would come to Ashdale Farm for relaxation during the warmer months. Although it didn't produce anything, the farm expanded out over 91 acres of land, encompassing forests and fields as well as their own intricate gardens and stables. During Prohibition, the family used their apple orchards to produce hard cider. And after Prohibition, it's possible the Stevens used part of the building as a tavern for extra income. Of all the owners, the most significant were Helen Stevens and John Gardner Coolidge. Helen married John in 1909 and inherited the property in 1914. During their time there, the estate was transformed into the time capsule of the age it is today. An example of the wealthy family's vacation home, it showcases many aspects of the family's interests and the way they created a place for themselves in Essex County's history. John and Elizabeth Stevens arrived in North Andover from England in the mid-17th century. Their grandchildren built and lived off of Ashdale Farm and kept it in the family for almost 300 years to come. As the family gained wealth, it became less about production and more about vacation. Fast forward to the early 20th century when John Coolidge married Helen Stevens and added a whole new wing of history to this already very culturally rich family. John was the nephew of Isabella Stewart Gardner, one of the most prominent and credible art collectors in history. She inspired him to create his own collection, which grew with his travels. Although John is not as famous for his collections, he was also an author and an important part of the United States government. This isn't surprising, as he was a distant descendant of one of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. These prestigious historical figureheads only improved the status of the Stevens Coolidge family and, of course, their properties. Helen had a passion for architecture and was very interested in reviving the farmhouse in colonial revival style. Shortly before the death of her husband, she hired Joseph Chandler, an esteemed preservation architect who also preserved the Mayflower House as well as the home of Paul Revere. This job was very complicated, as Helen wanted to improve the home both aesthetically and functionally while keeping its historical value. Windows and dormers were moved and added, rooms expanded, and a double staircase built as one of Chandler's trademark pieces. Because of the extraordinary effort put into it, the Stevens Coolidge place is one of the most famous Neo-Georgian colonial revivals in New England. The total project took 26 years and encompassed Chandler's personal architectural flair, as well as the many interests and hobbies of the Coolidges. John Coolidge loved to travel, and this was related to his job as a governmental diplomat. Traveling the world, he worked in Peking, Paris, and Nicaragua as a representative of the United States up until his death in 1936. Because travel and communication technology were still very limited at this time, diplomats in foreign nations had plenipotentiary power, which allowed them to act and make important decisions on their own regarding their nation. This was a very important and esteemed position because sometimes decisions had to be made on the spot, and this went to him alone. His occupation brought his family quite a bit of income. Aside from his home's revival, John's vast equities allowed him to pursue many collections of artifacts, from Chinese porcelains to early New England furniture. The Stevens family, too, was very wealthy, and John only contributed to the funds needed for his wife's passion for gardening and flowers. Before her death in 1962, Helen Stevens Coolidge bequeathed the Stevens Coolidge place to the trustees of reservation, who remain the careholder of the property today. Many of John's collections, including needlework, Irish glass, and paintings, are currently privately owned. Although he died almost 30 years prior to her, they spent a lot of time traveling together when he wasn't working, and a lot of time at Ashdale Farm. While she was alone, Helen took great care of her gardens. It was one of the most important aspects of her life, and her hard work was evident. The trustees of reservation have taken great care to look after and improve them like she would have wanted. Around the world, much of history is focused on the struggle of the middle and lower classes, cataloging stories of determination among peasants in the strife of revolution. These are interesting and provide vast amounts of knowledge about a particular era. However, there is more to history than the bottom of the ladder. A huge aspect of history, often neglected, is the life of the upper class. By the 19th century, Massachusetts had people of all classes, and in any given group had lives entirely different from the others. From its beginning as a wealthy estate, both in income and culture, Ashdale Farm came to be a beautiful example of the everyday lifestyle of upper-class early Americans.